Kenneth Walker. Is he going to be a dynasty stud or dud? We're here to break that down on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast right now. And the best part, too, is we have a special guest, one of the Razzball OGs, starting right now on Razzball Fantasy Podcast. Welcome back to another great edition of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Today, I'm excited to bring in one of the mainstays, one of the guys that have been carrying the Razzball Fantasy Football side for years, coming on the show today to talk about Kenneth Walker. This guy has ridiculous player comps. I'm excited to get into it. He has provided me some great notes. I'm really excited to talk about Kenneth Walker. Before we get into all that, we want to make sure everybody is following us across the board. We have a lot of exciting stuff going on right now at razzball.com. Not only on the site for the NFL piece, we're creating new stats. We're going to have a bunch of new stuff for you coming soon. We're going to have breaking news all across the board. But make sure you're following the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. We're breaking down videos almost daily at this point for the NFL side. And more importantly, for our baseball fanatics, we got animated videos. We got daily updates and uploads coming from the Razzball Baseball Podcast as well. And also make sure you're checking out the site just in general for baseball, basketball, hockey, and more content across the board. But we also have social media now, folks. We got Razzball Fantasy on IG and TikTok. So make sure you're checking us out across the board. We really would appreciate a follow. Now, we buried the league long enough, so let's bring in our special guest for today. It's Beaton. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm excited, man. Beaton shared his notes with me about Kenneth Walker, and just reading him, I was ready to start at 5:45 instead of 6 today. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. So let's just get right into it, Beaton. So I know you did a lot of research on Kenneth Walker. Tell us what you found about him as a player and your just overall thoughts with his transition to the NFL.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just start with kind of the basic measurements. He's 5'9", 211. He transferred to Michigan State his junior year. He left after junior year. That's what we want to see from a dynasty running back, from an age perspective, from a developmental perspective, because when they hit their senior year, if that's when they break out, there's always a little bit of a question mark if they're then just playing, above their age. And that's really where that comes from. So, it was nice to see him break out as a junior with Michigan State. I think there's a few areas that typically we look at for running backs when we're breaking down film. The first one is running style. He's a very patient runner. He's probably the most patient runner in this draft class. They ran a lot of shotgun and pistol at Michigan State this year. The Seahawks did run 62% out of the shotgun last year. So as far as the adjustment goes, it's really not going to be that big of a change for him. And he actually showed the ability, at least in my film review, I believe he showed the ability to run either a power or a zone blocking scheme. So it really doesn't matter. And the Seahawks do mix it up. They don't have a specific style. They have been more run power in the past, but they definitely do when they run outside of the tackles, they extend, they do the zone blocking scheme. They've carried some of the Shanahan principles still. So there's a little bit of zone scheme and power running availability in the scheme and for Kenneth Walker. So I feel like he's a great fit there. He just can plant and go anywhere. He can plant and go behind the line, midfield. If there's somebody coming at him, there's no stop in at any point in the speed. So it's just immediate where he gets going. I mean, he is a sub 440 guy. We're talking about a guy that has tons of speed, has a feel for the space behind the line, always kind of finds a way, whether that's like the first down, the end zone, or when the play is just busted and he needs to get back to the yard of the scrimmage. He has a way of just finding kind of lanes to get there, or ways to get there. It's a situation where, like, I just like how he finds ways to do it. It doesn't always work that way in the pros because everybody is elite athletes at that point, but it's just nice to see he can keep on his feet and move the pile. He kind of has a late burst at points where he just kind of kicks it into gear and drops that shoulder, and really he can finish off the run strong despite not really being a full power runner. And he does actually fit that old cliche where he seemingly gets better as the game goes on here, Bobby.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the landing spot. Do you feel that the Seahawks are going to maximize his talent, or would you have preferred to see him go somewhere else potentially?
No, I mean, like I said, I feel like the Seahawks are a great spot for him. They run a lot of shotgun. They run a mix of running schemes. They've never really gotten their running backs involved too much in the passing game, but they've also
Mhm.
never really had an elite pass catching running back. I'm not saying that Kenneth Walker is an elite pass catching running back. He only had 13 receptions his junior year, 19 total between his 3 seasons. But from what I've seen on tape, I do actually think he has nice hands. He catches it away from his body. He can grab it out of the air. He can run different routes. The only kind of knock I would say in the route running is, and some of it is play design, is it does take him a little bit too much time sometimes to get into those dump off routes to where he would actually be useful in that play. So I don't know if the Seahawks will really increase their passing to running backs, but we're also talking about a situation where the quarterback is changing. So
Yep.
it could go a number of ways in regards to the dump offs, but I do feel like if that's something they want to utilize, he has that ability despite the low number of receptions. And people point to that when they say he can't catch, but people also wanted to point to like Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's catchy receptions when they were talking about his ability to catch. And if you watch the film, he was always kind of just average at it. And you can get away with being average at catching the ball, honestly, in the pros, as long as you're not trying to run, you know, really more complex routes that you really only see the top receiving backs kind of get after.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was looking at Kenneth Walker, and I actually use player profile, I like to look at just like those advanced stats, those Spark score stuff, and just get a general idea of what this guy's player comparables are. When I tell you his metrics are off the charts, like 98th percentile 40-yard dash, 96th percentile speed score, and then on top of that, he was a workhorse in his final year in college. His player comps coming out of college are LaDainian Tomlinson and Todd Gurley. So just really quick. That's like talk about like you can't get much better for player comps for fantasy football. Like immediately, I'm just like I might as well just take Kenneth Walker right now. Even I don't even have a draft. I'm going to draft him. It's ridiculous. So tell me, is there any shot that he lives up to that level in fantasy?
I mean, I like Kenneth Walker. I like what I see. I don't see him as a generational talent. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the names that you're
Yeah.
throwing out as comps. Now when people go for comps, we don't ever get the oh well, you know what, he looks like Thomas Jones. Like that's never
Yeah.
used. It's always a Hall of Famer or a borderline Hall of
Yeah.
Fame guy. So to some extent, putting those comps on guys are always a little unfair. But I do believe he has all the tools to be, maybe not an elite running back, but a continuous RB1. Given the workload, I don't think there's any kind of concern for me that he can't be, a solid RB1 in the NFL.
All right. Well, I gotta push back a little bit and say that Zamir White's player comp was Damian Williams, so at least there was some possibility there.
I mean,
Not
that
all
just
of it.
means that you don't want Zamir White according to their
Yeah.
player profiler, is what
Yeah.
what that really means. I
Yeah.
think, because again, you don't really see that very often.
No.
Maybe it's just some of the numbers lining up for them. I'm not really sure how player profiler comes up with their comps. It's not film based; it's numbers based. So,
Yeah.
from a film perspective, the name that kind of comes up, if we're gonna like over exaggerate and say what he could be, he's so quick. He has such great lateral ability to move, jump cut, not lose speed. He's got a decent stiff arm. You can't really like really weak arm or leg tackle him. He kind of has like a good pull away move where he kind of lifts that leg up at the last second. It kind of reminds me of a LaShawn McCoy, but like LaShawn McCoy had elite pass catching ability. And I don't think that's there. So kind of remove that ability and replace it with average pass catching ability. And I think that's kind of what the upside comp looks like for me. For Kenneth Walker, he's not small by any means, but at 5'9", 211, that's not a traditional like big back like a Derrick Henry or Adrian Peterson. That is on the smaller side, like a LaShawn McCoy, a CMC, but I wouldn't comp him to CMC. Like that's not who he reminds me of. It is more quick twitch, more sideways, side to side. He's more likely to make you miss than power run you and then keep going. He really uses power to finish runs off rather than break through people.
All right. We got have enough comparisons for now. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are exciting for redraft and dynasty. The first thing is that with the Chris Carson neck injury, it sounds like this pick kind of makes it sound like the Seahawks are really concerned about it and that he might not even be playing. But also, he has only a 1.5 million dead cap after this season. You on from him. Rashad Penny, they did not pick up his fifth-year option. He's a free agent after this season. So even if, for example, you find himself early on sharing work with Rashad Penny, at least we know from a dynasty perspective, that the floodgates could open as soon as 2023 for Kenneth Walker. The other things that have to really improve, though, are the offensive line and quarterback play that you just brought up. For a running back to be good in fantasy, you would like for him to have a top 20 quarterback, at least a top 20 offensive line. And they don't have either right now. And Geno Smith versus Drew Lock will be an interesting, 2022. But hopefully after this season, they find themselves maybe with a better draft pick. They get a, quality quarterback. But the offensive line too, they did bring in Cross. They did draft another tackle later in the draft. They didn't bring Austin Blythe, who was the Rams starting center 2 years ago, who barely played last year. So they have made some moves. But Dwayne Brown, their left tackle, was their best offensive lineman. He's not coming back. So I am a little concerned that the line and the QB play might hold back the run game in general. However, the biggest question mark for me has to be Pete Carroll. How many times have we seen Pete Carroll? You think he's going to do one thing and does another. 2018, they draft Rashad Penny in the first round. Oh, yeah, it's Chris Carson's backfield. You go back to 2013. They drafted Christine Michael in the second round. Oh, no, we're going to give Marshawn Lynch 300 carries. So, early draft picks, they don't necessarily – you're going to get the job. It's going to be the best man, which is great. So Kenneth Walker could easily beat out Rashad Penny, but it does make me want to hedge just a little bit because it could just be Rashad Penny was the RB1 in fantasy the last 5 weeks of the season. You could very well see a split. You could very well see it's Rashad Penny. So I think camp reports are going to be important if we even get good camp reports these days. But at the same time, let's talk about ADPs right now. So Kenneth Walker, 81st overall. 4th overall, though, in Dynasty rookie rankings. So I guess, Speedon, let's talk about both. Let's pick one, whatever, that's fine. But what's your thoughts about the 81st overall for best ball right now, ADP, and also that 4th overall in redraft Dynasty?
I like the 81st as a redraft price. I think that's probably right around where he's going to end up falling for me, at least among running backs. Overall, I tend to front load running backs. Just that's my draft strategy. If you've listened to the podcast or read anything I've ever written, I believe that you take the top running backs. Most of the top running backs come from the top of the draft, and you can find top receivers in the middle and late parts of the draft potentially. So I've always been on that end, so I may have him higher in the overall, but I think where that ends up putting him among running backs is somewhere in that 20 to 25 range, where I think you can go in a number of different directions. And I probably have him in the upper side of that. So I'd probably have him in that 22, 23 area among running backs currently.
Okay. Yeah, and that 4th overall pick now, that means he's going kind of ahead of some of the premier wide receivers. You're probably going to have, Breece Hall, Drake London, and then you start looking at maybe, Garrett Wilson and Kenneth Walker. Are you going to take him at 4 if he's there, or are you going to pass on him for a receiver in dynasty formats?
So I just had a dynasty redraft or a dynasty rookie draft. It's still going on, actually. I had the 3rd pick and I took him at 3. So okay. I'm perfectly fine taking him at 3. I honestly don't believe there's a whole lot of separation amongst the receivers in the first round. So if you really were set on Drake London or Traylon Burks or Garrett Wilson, I don't blame you at all for going ahead and taking them. Or if you're just a wide receiver heavy dynasty player, that's perfectly fine. I tend to build around young running backs, and find receivers. That's generally my plan. So I took him at 3, and I'm perfectly happy to do that. Um, yeah, I think there's just as much upside in some of the back end first and early second round wide receivers as there is in these the top of the first, honestly. So I'm perfectly fine waiting.
Yeah, I guess they had me at Todd Gurley and Ladainian Thompson, so I'm probably okay with 4th overall. When it comes to best ball, I think 81. I think I might even consider, if we're not sure getting into August who's the starter, it might not be bad to use a 8th, 9th round pick on both players to see what happens. I mean, it's not that much draft capital at the 8th, 9th rounds to take both guys. If, for example, like you didn't do the B Don way and you went early wide receiver. So I do think there is a room for that. But number one, we have to see if the quarterback situation shakes out. And 2, what do they do? Is the offensive line actually come together? Do these rookies actually become good? We have to figure this all out. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. That was actually a great show. B Don, any closing remarks about the people should know about Kenneth Walker? Any upcoming articles, anything like that you want to promote for yourself?
So I'm always gonna be working on some prospect stuff for everybody. I think you and I are actually gonna talk about using some of our products to maybe sit down and go through some YouTube clips of these guys as I do my film review and talk about what I'm looking for, talk about what I see, so you can understand what I'm looking for and how much crap I'm full of as I walk you through these videos. I promise you, I'm no Harmon, but I understand what I'm kind of looking at when I'm looking at these guys, and I will also finish off by saying I am not worried about Rashad Penny, nor am I drafting him inside the top 100.
All right, there you go. There you have it, folks. That's all we have for today for Kenneth Walker to the Seattle Seahawks. Once again, make sure you're following Razzball Fantasy across the board on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and go to razzball.com. Go check out the latest stuff for baseball, basketball, hockey, and football. We're doing a bunch of great stuff on razzball.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby Larco, for B Don. Thanks for joining us. We're out of here.